In the heart of Indani, a village known for its lush landscapes and the harmonious hum of daily life, Mama Aduni lived with her daughter Ifunia. The air was thick with the smell of fresh earth after rainfall, and the sun painted golden streaks across the horizon as the village went about its day. The villagers had long respected Mama Aduni for her wisdom and unwavering moral compass. A widow for many years, she had raised Ifunia with love, teaching her the ways of the earth, the importance of kindness, and the strength of a woman's heart. But despite the beauty of their lives, a heavy concern clouded Mama Aduni's every thought. Ifunia had grown into a striking young woman, her beauty as radiant as the sun that bathed the village. Her hair, long and dark like the midnight sky, cascaded down her back in waves, and her smile could light up even the darkest corners of the village. Yet, with this beauty came an unsettling vulnerability that Mama Aduni could not ignore. The men of Indani began to take notice of her, their eyes filled with admiration and something far more disturbing, a lust that threatened to consume Ifunia's innocence. "I fear for you, my child," Mama Aduni would often say, her voice tinged with worry as she combed her daughter's hair each evening. "The world is full of wolves who hide behind the sheep's skin. You must be careful who you trust." Ifunia, though young, had begun to understand her mother's fears. She had heard the whispers among the village women, their hushed tones speaking of men who sought only to use her beauty for their own desires. "They will try to break you," Ifunia, the older woman, would say. "But you must remain steadfast, for the world will never treat you as an equal. Your beauty is both a blessing and also your downfall." Despite these warnings, Ifunia's heart remained pure. She had always believed that the world could be a kind place, one where love and trust bloomed like the flowers that dotted the fields around Indani. But with each passing day, she noticed how the men's gazes lingered a little longer, their smiles a little more predatory. She had been taught to be polite, to smile back, but deep inside, a sense of unease began to settle in her chest. It was not the kind of world her mother had dreamed of for her. One afternoon, as Mama Aduni and Ifunia walked through the village market, they overheard a conversation between two men. "She's too pure, too innocent for this world," one man whispered, his voice filled with ill intent. "She's ripe for the taking. A beauty like that deserves to be spoiled." The word stung like a slap to the face, and Mama Aduni's heart sank. She pulled Ifunia closer, her protective instinct flaring. "We must find a way to shield you from these vultures, my daughter. The village will not see what I see, the dangers that lurk behind their words." That night, as the moon hung high in the sky, Mama Aduni prayed to the goddess Elle, asking for guidance and protection for her beloved daughter. "Elle, protect my child. Grant her strength and wisdom to navigate the treacherous world she now faces. I cannot bear to watch her suffer." As the stars twinkled above the village, Mama Aduni's prayers echoed into the night, carrying on the winds that rustled through the trees. Little did she know, the goddess Elle was already listening. Ifunia was the heartbeat of the village of Indani, her every step a testament to the kindness and grace she carried within her. With eyes that sparkled like the morning dew on fresh leaves, and a smile that could calm the stormiest of hearts, she was the embodiment of beauty and innocence. The village had long known her as a sweet, compassionate soul, one who would help the elderly with their chores, tend to the children with a gentle hand, and offer food to those in need. Her laughter was infectious, her kindness boundless, and her heart pure as gold. The village women would often say, "Ifunia is a gift from the heavens, a blessing to our village." But her beauty, as much as it was admired, was becoming a source of growing concern. Each passing day, more and more men began to seek her hand in marriage. Some were sincere, hoping to make her their partner for life, while others, driven by darker desires, saw only her beauty as a way to fulfill their selfish whims. Mama Aduni noticed this with a growing sense of unease. The men who came to their doorstep, some with flowers in hand and others with promises of wealth and comfort, all shared one thing in common: they were drawn to Ifunia's outer beauty, but not all of them seemed to value the purity of her heart. "My daughter, you are like the rarest of flowers in this village," Mama Aduni would often say, holding Ifunia close as they sat by the fire in the evenings. "But the world is filled with men who do not understand the value of such beauty. They do not see the strength in your heart, nor the brilliance of your mind. All they see is what is on the outside. Ifunia, though innocent and trusting, had begun to notice the changes in the way men looked at her. At first, she welcomed their admiration, feeling flattered and respected. But with each passing day, she could see the sharpness in their eyes, the way their gazes lingered too long, and how their words, once kind and respectful, started to carry an edge of possessiveness. It made her uncomfortable, and she would often retreat into her mother's arms, seeking solace in her warmth and reassurance. "Don't worry, my love," Mama Aduni would say, stroking her daughter's hair with a tender hand. "Not all men are bad, but some may seek to hurt you. We must be cautious. You are not just any woman, you are a treasure that deserves to be protected." The bond between mother and daughter was unbreakable, forged in the fires of shared hardship. Mama Aduni had always been the protector, the one who kept Ifunia safe from the cruelties of the world. And in return, Ifunia trusted her mother with all her heart, knowing that her mother's wisdom was as vast as the mountains that surrounded their village. One evening, as the two of them sat by the fire, Mama Aduni noticed a man standing in the shadows of their hut. He had been watching Ifunia for some time, his eyes following her every movement with an intensity that made her mother's skin crawl. His name was Você, a wealthy trader who had recently come to Indani, and his reputation as a smooth talker had already spread through the village. "Você," Mama Aduni called out, her voice steady yet firm. "What brings you to our humble home this evening?" Você stepped forward, his gaze never leaving Ifunia's face. "I have come to seek the hand of your daughter," he said with a practiced smile, his voice smooth as silk. "I have heard of her beauty, and I believe she would make a fine wife." Mama Aduni studied him carefully, her intuition flaring with warning. Something about him didn't sit right with her. His words were charming, his offers generous, but there was an emptiness behind his eyes, a hunger that went beyond simple admiration. "She is a gift to the world," Mama Aduni said softly, her gaze not leaving him. "But you must know, she is not a prize to be won by any man who comes with empty promises." Você, undeterred, smiled wider. "Of course, Mama Aduni. I respect you greatly. But a woman like Ifunia deserves a man who can provide for her, protect her, and give her the world." Mama Aduni's eyes narrowed as she stood up, placing a protective hand on Ifunia's shoulder. "The world is not just riches, Você. A woman like my daughter seeks love, respect, and sincerity. Do you offer her these things?" Ose's smile faltered, but he quickly recovered, bowing slightly. "I offer her everything, Mama Aduni. You have my word." But Mama Aduni was not convinced. She could feel the weight of his words, and the look in his eyes only confirmed her worst fears. She knew that Ifunia's beauty would draw many suitors like Você, each with their own agendas, but none who saw her for who she truly was. "Come, my daughter," she said, taking Ifunia's hand and gently pulling her away from Você. "Let us go inside. We have much to discuss." As they walked into their home, Mama Aduni couldn't shake the feeling that a storm was coming, a storm that would test the very core of their bond and their ability to protect the girl they both loved so deeply. Before we continue, I want to remind you that you have forgotten to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go ahead and subscribe by clicking the button down below. I am waiting. Alright, let's move on. The village of Indani, once a sanctuary of peace, now felt like a cage to Mama Aduni. The morning sun that once brought warmth and hope now felt heavy, casting long shadows on her heart. Each day, as she watched her daughter walk to the market or tend to the garden, she felt the weight of her worries grow. The men of Indani whom she had once trusted to be respectable and honorable now seemed like wolves circling a vulnerable lamb. Every glance they cast towards Ifunia was a reminder of the danger lurking just beyond the horizon. Mama Aduni had always prided herself on being a strong and capable woman. She had raised Ifunia alone, weathering the storms of life with resilience and grace. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was losing control of her daughter's safety. Every time Ifunia smiled at a passing man, every time she engaged in conversation with a stranger, Mama Aduni's stomach tightened with fear. It was as if the very essence of her daughter's innocence was being chipped away, one gaze, one word at a time. One afternoon, while Mama Aduni was working in the garden, she overheard a conversation between two women in the village. They spoke in hushed tones, but their words cut through the air like a dagger. "Ifunia is too pure for this world," one woman said. "She doesn't know the ways of men. They'll come for her. They always do." The words echoed in Mama Aduni's mind as she bent over her work, her hands trembling slightly as she pulled weeds from the soil. Her heart clenched in her chest. She had always known that Ifunania's beauty would attract attention, but now it was becoming too much to bear. She had seen the way the men looked at her daughter, their eyes filled with hunger and desire, their words laced with false promises. Some had already offered her wealth, others had spoken of their love, but Mama Aduni knew it was all a ploy. They weren't after Ifunania's heart, they were after her beauty, her innocence. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Mama Aduni couldn't hold her fears inside any longer. She took Ifunania's hands in hers, her voice trembling with emotion. "My daughter," she said, her words heavy with worry. "The world is not as kind as you think. There are men who will pretend to love you, but their love is nothing but a lie. They will use you, break you, and leave you empty. I cannot bear to see you suffer like that." Ifunania looked at her mother, her brow furrowed in confusion. "Mama, I know the world can be difficult, but I believe in the goodness of people. Not all men are bad. Not all of them will hurt me." Before we continue, I want to remind you that you have forgotten to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go ahead and subscribe by clicking the button down below. I am waiting. Alright, let's move on. Mama Aduni's heart ached as she looked into her daughter's trusting eyes. She wanted to believe that Ifunania's optimism was enough to protect her, but deep down, she knew the truth. The world was not kind to women, especially those as beautiful and innocent as Ifunania. "Child," Mama Aduni said softly, "you are a rare flower in this world. But flowers like you attract both the bees that pollinate and the ones that destroy. You must be cautious. There are those who will say anything to win your heart, but it is not love they seek. They seek only to possess you." Ifunania, feeling the weight of her mother's words, nodded silently. She could feel the depth of Mama Aduni's concern, but she also couldn't shake the belief that there was still goodness in the world. She had been taught to believe in the kindness of others, to trust in the strength of her own heart. But as the days passed and more suitors came knocking, her heart began to falter. The men who once greeted her with smiles now spoke with hidden agendas. They wanted to buy her affection with promises of gold and land, as if she could be purchased like any other commodity. One evening, a man named Chik, a wealthy landowner from a neighboring village, arrived at their doorstep. His eyes glinted with interest as he looked at Ifunania, but there was something unsettling about the way he spoke. He complimented her beauty, but his words were laced with something darker. "Your beauty is a treasure, Ifunania," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "A woman like you deserves to live a life of luxury. You belong in a home where you will be adored and pampered." Mama Aduni stood at the door, her arms crossed over her chest. "What do you seek from my daughter, Chik?" she asked, her voice firm and unwavering. Chik's smile widened, but it didn't reassure her. "I seek a wife who will share in the wealth I have acquired. Ifunania is the kind of woman who can elevate my life. She will live in comfort and be free from the struggles of everyday life." Mama Aduni felt a wave of anger rise within her. She could see the truth behind Chik's words. He didn't care for Ifunania's heart, he only wanted to possess her beauty, to claim her as his own, like an object to be admired. "She is not a prize to be won with wealth, Chik," Mama Aduni said, her voice low and dangerous. "You do not seek her heart, you seek to own her. You will not have her." Chik's face darkened, but he said nothing. He left quietly, his eyes narrowing as he looked at Ifunania one last time, as though marking her as something to be had. After he left, Ifunania looked at her mother, her heart heavy with confusion. "Mama, why do they all seek to own me?" she asked softly. Mama Aduni's eyes filled with sorrow. "Because, my daughter, they do not understand that a woman is not a thing to be owned. They believe that your beauty makes you weak, that they can use it to control you. But you are stronger than they think. As Ifunia sat in silence, her mind swirling with the weight of her mother's words, Mama Aduni's fear deepened. How much longer could she protect her daughter from men like Chik? How could she shield Ifunia from the dangers of the world when it seemed that those dangers were closing in on them from all sides? The arrival of Nkem, a wealthy trader from a distant land, had stirred a buzz of excitement across the village. He arrived in a grand procession, his caravan of camels laden with exotic goods and fine fabrics, the sound of jingling coins and the clatter of merchandise filling the village square. His fine clothes and charming smile seemed to embody all the promises of wealth and prosperity that Ndani had long yearned for. But it was not the goods he brought with him that caught the eye of the villagers, it was his gaze upon Ifunia. Nkem's reputation had preceded him, and rumors whispered that he was a man of great influence and wealth, capable of offering anything a woman could desire. As he strolled through the village, his eyes never strayed far from Ifunia, his admiration for her beauty clear for all to see. He showered the village with gifts of brightly colored beads, rich fabrics, and baskets of fruit, but it was Ifunia who captivated him most. He saw her not as a woman of strength or intelligence, but as a prized jewel to be owned, a possession to be claimed. Ifunia, he said, stepping up to her one afternoon as she was returning from the market, your beauty shines brighter than the stars themselves. I have come from far away, bringing with me the riches of the world, for a woman like you deserves nothing less. His voice was smooth, each word laced with a honeyed charm that made the villagers smile and nod in approval. They had never seen a man so wealthy, so willing to offer his fortune to such a young, beautiful woman. Nkem's words seemed to promise a life of luxury and security, a dream that many in Ndani could only wish for. He spoke of a grand house by the river, servants to attend to her every need, and the finest silks from foreign lands that would drape her like a queen. But Mama Aduni, ever watchful, stood at a distance, her eyes narrowing as she observed the interaction. She could feel the danger in Nkem's words, the manipulative undertone beneath the surface of his compliments. She had seen men like him before, men who sought to possess, not to love. To Mama Aduni, his charm was nothing more than a mask, hiding a heart that only saw her daughter as a means to an end. No man should speak to my daughter with such promises, Mama Aduni muttered to herself, her protective instincts kicking in. She knew that Ifunia's beauty would draw suitors, but this man Nkem seemed different. He was cunning, playing on the desires of the villagers to win their favor, all while keeping his true intentions hidden behind his charm. Before we continue, I want to remind you that you have forgotten to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go ahead and subscribe by clicking the button down below. I am waiting. Alright, let's move on. Nkem's courtship of Ifunia did not end with the exchange of flattering words. He began to visit their home regularly, bringing gifts and speaking of his plans for the future. At first, the villagers were impressed by his generosity, and many began to whisper that Ifunia would be fortunate to marry such a wealthy man. They spoke of the riches she would inherit, the comfortable life she would lead, and the prestige that would come with becoming Nkem's wife. Some of the village women, who had long dreamed of escaping their struggles, urged Ifunia to accept his proposal. He will provide you with everything you need, Ifunia, one of the women said, her voice filled with envy. A life of luxury, of ease. Why should you refuse him? But Mama Aduni remained unmoved by the flattery and gifts. She saw through Nkem's polished exterior, recognizing the manipulation that lay beneath. Her concern grew with each passing day, for Nkem was not like the other suitors who had come before him. His offers of wealth and comfort were not genuine expressions of love, they were attempts to secure Ifunia's submission, to buy her affection and control her future. One evening, after Nkem had left their home with yet another basket of fruits and promises of grandeur, Mama Aduni sat down with Ifunia, her voice heavy with the weight of her worries. My daughter, she said softly, her voice filled with love yet laced with urgency, you must be careful. This man, Nkem, is not the man he pretends to be. His gifts and promises are like a trap, luring you into a life where you are nothing more than a possession to be controlled. Ifunia looked at her mother, a mixture of confusion and frustration in her eyes. But Mama, he is offering me a chance at something better. He is offering me a life that we've never known. Why would he do that if he didn't care for me? Mama Aduni's gaze softened, and she took her daughter's hands in hers. "My love, you deserve a life of love, respect, and freedom, not one where you are bought and sold like an object." Nkem does not see you as a partner, as an equal. He sees you as a way to increase his own power and wealth. Do not let him deceive you with his false promises. The truth in her mother's words began to settle in Ifunania's heart. She had been dazzled by Nkem's wealth and his promises of a better life, but her mother's words reminded her of the value of respect, trust, and genuine love, things that money could never buy. The next day, Nkem arrived with more gifts, this time, a beautiful necklace of shimmering beads. He placed it around Ifunania's neck, his fingers lingering just a moment too long. "This is for you," he said, his smile wide and insincere. "A woman as beautiful as you deserves to wear nothing but the finest." Ifunania stood still, her heart conflicted, but Mama Aduni stepped forward, her voice firm and unwavering. "We do not need your gifts, Nkem," she said. "If you truly care for my daughter, you would not try to win her heart with offerings. You would respect her enough to seek her love, not her submission." Nkem's smile faltered, but he quickly recovered. "You are wise, Mama Aduni," he said, bowing his head slightly. "But you must understand, I only wish to give your daughter the world." "Ifunania does not need the world, Nkem," Mama Aduni replied, her voice hardening. "She needs a man who respects her, not one who seeks to control her." With that, Nkem's expression darkened. He knew he could not win Mama Aduni's trust, but he was not a man to be easily deterred. "We shall see, Mama Aduni," he said, his voice low. "We shall see." As Nkem walked away, his figure growing smaller in the distance, Mama Aduni turned to Ifunania, her heart heavy with concern. "My daughter, I know this is difficult, but you must trust me." There is danger in Nkem's words. "Beware of men who offer you the world, when they seek only to own you." Ifunania nodded, though doubt still lingered in her heart. The battle for her heart was not over, and she could only hope that the wisdom of her mother would be enough to protect her from the dangers of men like Nkem.